The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast present
Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue.
The 0-2, swing and a miss, strike three, blew it past it.
Discussing baseball, good drinks, and food.
And you got your honey mustard?
I love mustard.
With Ted Hicks, Todd Vandenberg, and Lee Vowell.
Well, big deal. I am very professional.
Every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on the Happy Hour Network.
And welcome to Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue Super Bowl edition, because there's a Super Bowl tomorrow, a bowl of super stuff tomorrow, with Todd, Ted, and Lee. Like us on Facebook, follow us on the Twitter at Baseball Beer BBQ, and read us on our blog site, baseballbeerbbq.com, and get even more info at thehappyhournetwork.com. We will have a huge show today, and we'll be joined in just a few moments by Sharona, the greatness that is Sharona, of NFLFemale.com, Game Over Sports, and other various outlets. Then at the bottom of the hour, we will have Antwan Staley on, who is a reporter for Palm Beach Post and Antwan Sports. And then at the top of the next hour, we will have the fantastic Danny Kelly, editor of Field Goals and writer for SB Nation. So, again, I'm Lee. Ted, who else do we have to thank today?
We have a lot of people to thank, but wait a minute. My contract only says I have, maximum a 90-minute show. All of this top of the hour business, is this going to be like a 6-hour show this morning?
We are, yes. It's going to be actually all day through the Super Bowl. We're actually going to call the Super Bowl. We're going to break the law, and we're actually going to do our own play-by-play of the Super Bowl tomorrow on. No, we're not. That'd be cool, though, wouldn't it? That'd be awesome.
It really would.
It'd be like Mystery Science Theater 3000, except we'd be watching football game. That'd be kind of cool.
That's what
it really
idea.
would.
Yes.
But we had so many different people to thank. Really appreciate the support, the love, the text messages, you don't have our number. Okay. So here's the people that play our show. I-95 Sports Network, Back Sports Page, RS Sports, XRP Radio in the UK, Arena Sports Network, and I would be remiss if I didn't say NGSC Sports that powers us on the iHeartRadio app. And, Todd, you have someone special you would like to thank?
I don't know if we have Todd on the line. It looks like he has just fallen off the face of the earth. So, Ted, why don't you do the honors?
Friends, lovers, if you have a PC problem and you're located in the Rollin...
Todd actually has a PC problem right now, obviously.
If you have a PC problem and you're located in the Raleigh-Durham area, we would suggest you go to PC Repair Raleigh. Or you can go to Google or Bing or Yahoo and type in PC Raleigh Repair. And you're going to come up with CJ Computer Services that does mobile support. What does that mean, folks? It means you have your problem at your home. They are coming to you. That's CJ Computer Services. Find them on Facebook, Twitter, or cjcomputerservices.net.
So you said problems at home. Does that also help with, like, Johnny Manziel type problems?
Oh, come on. I don't think CJ Computer Services is going to help him. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but that brother got some problems.
Yeah, yes, he does. And actually, we have a couple of minutes because it's just you and I. Todd doesn't want to join the show or something. I don't know what happened. But no, seriously, I mean, the guy has issues, right? He obviously, It's funny because what do you think about the Dallas Police Department saying it's a closed case on Thursday? I mean, I don't know if you've seen the news today, but they basically are saying we're reopening the case. The ex-girlfriend has got a I can't think of what it's called. Protective
order of protection.
Thank you. Yes. And that's going to cover the next
order?
2 years. Yes, I think it's the same kind of thing, but that's going to cover the next 2 years. So he's not supposed to have any contact with 2 years. Also, his own father, said that twice in the past week he has denied people asking to go back into rehab. So he said no twice in the past week that he's not going to do that. What do you think about it? It should, in my opinion, Johnny Manziel should he should take a year off. I mean, the team should say, take a year off. I know you don't want to do that. There's too much money involved. But, if the guy has a problem, he obviously seems to have some kind of problem. I don't know Johnny Manziel, obviously, but he seems to have some kind of issue with drinking or drugs or whatever. It looks like drinking mostly. But shouldn't somebody just say, take a year off? Just, you need to get yourself together. Because, this is going to end up really bad. Something really bad is going to happen if he doesn't get control of himself.
That's so true. I mean, the narrative here is so warped because it's different if he was coming from a family that didn't have money, but it's just the opposite. So what are you seeing? You're seeing sponsors. His own agent even dropped him. I mean, outside of the whole LeBron James management group, his agent, I guess, released a press release that, hey, I'm dropping Johnny Manziel. With the Browns saying, oh, we're trying to reach out to Johnny Manziel, the person. I don't know, come on. The guy had problems. It's not like the problems arrived last night.
Right.
He has issues. He needs help. You wonder in the NFL Brotherhood of the Players Association, are they reaching out to this guy? Someone has to connect with him because, he's it appears, as is being reported, that he's off the rails. So,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, at least a year. At least a year to get yourself together. I mean, we saw something similar in baseball with Josh Hamilton.
Yep. That's actually a really good analogy because Hamilton, and he still battles with it. And if you have a problem, which it seems like Manziel has a problem. That's something. It doesn't just I'm going to take a year off. Even though talking about just taking a year off, it's going to be with him until he's 75, 95, as long as he lives.
Right.
So, but at this point, he's still young enough. He could do something. He couldn't throw his life away.
Right. And I think what we talked about with Josh Hamilton was, so what happens when the bright lights, the 50,000 fans, that are in the stadium rooting you on, what happens when all that goes away? And you're sitting there in at your home by yourself.
Right.
That's a really serious situation, Lee.
Right. And again, we're not counselors or anything, but at some point he does have to stop putting himself in harm's way. He needs to not, I just played a football game, now I'm going to fly to Las Vegas. At some point, somebody in his life, I don't know his parents, obviously. His father makes these statements, but at some point, the parents are always going to be the parents. They, at some point, have to say, look, you're our son. We need to somehow control your life a little bit better. I don't know what they can do, but at some point, something has to happen where somebody steps in, somebody who's involved with him, like his parents or some really good friend, whoever he trusts, needs to step in and say, look, we need to have more control over your life. I mean, he has to be willing to do that as somebody who has an issue. You have to be willing to give up a little bit to get back your life, to get control over your life, because he doesn't seem to have it at this point,
right.
Unfortunately. So, but yeah, obviously, a really, it's bad news. It's bad news as a human being, and hopefully nobody gets hurt, and hopefully he gets, understands what's happening and can carry on. But we're here to talk to the Super Bowl, of course. It looks like we have Todd back on. Todd, are you there?
I am there, but unfortunately this won't sound great because I'm on my phone. For some reason, Skype decided to die on me, so thanks, Skype. But
I'm using Skype. We shouldn't blame our sponsor, Skype, because I'm using Skype. It's working just fine. So maybe
Skype is godless. Skype is awful.
Skype
is the Donald Trump of interweb communication.
I
don't know. It works, I'll love it again. Yeah, it's just one of those weird things. Briefly, Johnny Manziel. It's
Todd, for 1 second. We understand Skype has 60 million users, but it just doesn't work for us. All right, sorry, Todd. I had to say that.
It's working just fine for me, Skype. If you'd like to, if you want to be our show's audible.com, we'd love to have you on, to bring you on as a sponsor, definitely. But anyway, go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I know we don't want to spend a lot of time wasting time on Johnny Manziel, but I thought his father saying that he needs help was interesting. It's like, you're his father. And I've read that he supposedly is the only one who's been trying to help him. It's like, well, he did a bad job raising the spoiled brat because he's been spoiled all his life. Who did that?
Right.
You know, I mean, you read stories about how he was handled in high school, how he got away with everything, and how he got away with everything at how many universities did he get kicked out of? Like, dude, maybe you should have done something with this jerkwad 10 years ago. I mean, I hope nothing bad, really bad, happens to Manziel. Hopefully he straightens his act out. But, you know, at this point, he's on an even better trajectory than Ryan Leaf. You know, it's ridiculous. But and for his dad to say, I hope he gets some help, is like, whatever. You created this bastard, literally. So, whatever.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, it's just it's just a shame. So, you know, again, let's talk about something for the Super Bowl. Of course, the Super Bowl happens to be played in a bowl, and it's awfully super most of the time. Alphabet soup or chicken noodle?
I'm not happy with the fact that we all know Google is Google, but when they change their name to Alphabet, I'm not happy about that. All right, sorry.
That's okay, because actually we can move on from our silliness, because at this point we would like to bring on Sharona, the greatness that is Sharona. Sharona can be found at NFLFemale.com, Game Over Sports, and other various outlets. And she's been with us several times. Always great to have her on. And the studio is being a little weird, so hopefully I'm going to bring in Sharona because her number shows up twice in the studio. It's the kind of day it is. So anyway, Sharona, if you're there, how are you?
Ain't technology grand, guys?
Yeah, your phone number
Sharona.
Your phone number in the studio shows up. It's like that Foghorn Leghorn cartoon where he's like the little chicken saying, "No, you're in there," and the guy's like, "I better not look." So anyway, but
Sharona,
yes.
Save us. We're already off the rails.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Happy Saturday. It's 9 o'clock here. I am finishing my last cup of coffee, so I don't know that I can be much help because, you know, your girl Sharona's tired. What a long week, but happy Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, before we get into the Super Bowl, you know, we learned that Kenny Stabler had CTE. How do you think? First of all, Roger Goodell had a statement yesterday saying that the NFL's been, you know, looking into this for decades, which I don't believe. But how do you think that the game will change over the next 20 years in an effort to address this, if it changes at all?
Yeah, I think that is the question. And one of the more interesting moments from the press conference yesterday, I didn't get a chance to really pay all that much attention to, you know, to what was going on with Roger Goodell in this press conference because I had my own long Super Bowl podcast. But there was a moment toward the end when he was asked about health concerns, and he very abruptly cut the press conference short. The NFL's concerned about it. There's no question about that. Kenny Stabler, just the latest in a long list of guys, list growing longer with each death. You know, there was a very, very young guy, and I'm sorry, my brain's not functioning this morning. I forget his name, but, I mean, he was only like 26 maybe.
Tyler
Sachs. Yes, that's the name. And he had it. So it's definitely of concern. How is the game going to change? I think the most likely way that it changes is in equipment. I think that they'll work on developing greater equipment. And I think the other way that it could possibly change, and I've written about this a lot, I need to write about it some more. As you guys know, I'm a huge gamer. And I think esports and virtual reality and the technological advances that we expect to see in video gaming and esports is going to have some effect on it. There's a debate going on how much of an effect it will have. But I could definitely see if virtual reality becomes as huge as what people think that it will, and I'm one of them who thinks that it will be huge. I could see some future where you watch your favorite athlete compete in a virtual reality situation, and it's not as it's not damaging like what we see now.
And that is exactly the reason you're on here, Sharona, for something very forward thinking. I mean, seriously, for once, seriously, that almost something like that almost has to happen. Anyway,
listen. Football's not going to go away in the physical sense. There are always going to be guys who are willing to risk their body for it. But you're seeing more and more athletes who are concerned, and there's a market there. There's no question but that there's a market there. They're working on licensing. Streaming is an issue. It's an area to keep an eye on for sure.
Let's move on to on-field issues. Not quite to the big game yet, but what were a couple of your biggest surprises of the NFL season?
Oh, wow. I knew the Panthers would be good. I didn't expect them to be undefeated for 13 weeks good. I think that sticks out in my mind. I didn't expect the Seahawks to struggle as much at the beginning of the season. I didn't expect Blake Bortles to put up even though the Jags weren't wildly successful. I think they only won maybe 5 games, something like that. I didn't expect Blake Bortles to put up the numbers that he put. I mean, his numbers were glorious. Those are the things that stick out in my mind right now. And as good as I thought Denver's defense was going to be, wow, I didn't expect them to be lights out good. And so that kind of sticks out too. Those are the things I suppose right off the top of my head. Okay.
And we're almost at the big game. So do you care about the commercials, the halftime show at all? And
not really. No, not really. Commercials and halftime is when Sharona fixes another drink, goes to the bathroom, grabs another hamburger, pizza slice, whatever it is I'm eating, refreshes the dip, that kind of thing. I know that some people do care about it. It's not a big thing for me.
Thank God.
Hey, Sharona, this is Ted. Always happy to have you on the show. Hey.
Hey, buddy. Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey. I can only thank the boss. So my question is, where do you see the Broncos having the biggest advantages?
Well, obviously their defense is so fantastic. I'm very the matchup, the thing that concerns, I guess, interests me is a better term, is to see how their front seven deals with Cam Newton. I think that is the matchup to watch. They are fantastic. DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, Derek Wolfe, Malik Jackson, former Tennessee Vowell. They are playing on such another level right now. But on the flip side, so is Cam Newton. How are they going to defend him? Will they spy him? Will they try to get after him? That is the matchup, in my opinion, to watch.
And what about the Panthers? Where do they create matchup problems for Denver?
Well, the thing with the Panthers is that I think overall they're the better football team. They've got a solid, strong defense all on their own. It doesn't get talked about enough. They had 4, maybe 5 guys who are in contention for the Defensive Player of the Year award. Luke, what can you say about that guy, the heart of that defense? Thomas Davis, what a great story there. Josh Norman, shut down corner in the secondary. Roman Harper revitalizing his career in Carolina. The loss of Charles Tillman, Peanut Tillman, that hurt. I think that, but they've got some younger guys too. I'm not so sure that it's not special teams that doesn't, possibly help the Panthers. Ted Ginn, we know how fantastic he can be, and a guy who's really come on. Another matchup to watch is, and they won't directly compete against one another, but both of these teams have some young, up-and-coming wide receivers. For the Carolina Panthers, it's Philly Brown. Keep an eye on that guy. I think that they, special teams might be the difference here.
Yeah, the names that you're throwing out, they're awesome, right? Peanut, Philly, there's a pork roast that's played in the NFL.
Yeah.
Football names are great.
Now.
So Ryan Harris is, of course, the Broncos' third starter at left tackle specifically this season. How do you think he can do? And obviously the Broncos had issues running the ball against the Patriots, even throwing the ball after the first quarter. How do you see the Broncos' offensive line? Are they going to be able to generate any yards, do you think, enough to win the game against Carolina?
Their offensive line has been subpar this year. There's no question at all about that. The running game has been inconsistent at best. It seemed to get going at the end, and you saw a little bit more in the playoffs. It is definitely of concern, and they certainly need to get their offense going. It's interesting how Denver's matched up against the Patriots in the conference championship game. I was one of the ones that was not giving Denver very much of a chance, to win that football game, and they jumped out early. It would not shock me at all, though, if Denver didn't make its bread and butter scoring via their defense. Their defense is that good. I think as long as the offense doesn't turn it over, doesn't make any glaring, huge mistakes, that they can be serviceable, they can be fine. But, as we've seen, that's the concern. Peyton Manning leading the league in interceptions and whatnot. But on the flip side, and as good as Carolina's offensive line has been, they haven't faced the likes of Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. And I'm very curious. Michael Orr has been such a great story this year with revitalizing his career in Carolina. But he's going to have his hands full with Denver's defensive line, DeMarcus Ware. I expect both teams are going to get their running backs in, probably for the Panthers, a heavy dose of Mike Talbert, and for Denver, I'm sure that they'll use their tight ends and running backs to give their offensive line an assist.
Yeah, and I think one thing the Broncos' offensive line might be able to do as opposed to the Patriots' line is when it's 4th and 1, maybe try blocking the guy come off at the end. That might help as well. So
that might, this game there are all kinds of matchups to watch. This game might very well be one in the trenches. Seriously, there's no question about that too. Yeah,
that's a good point. So you're a Tennessee lady, and of course we all love Peyton in Tennessee, I'll be honest, I don't think the Broncos are going to win, but I think I'd love to see Peyton get it because he's a Tennessee
It'd be
guy.
a great story. I think most football fans could cheer for that.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, unless you're a Patriots fan, because they just seem to hate Peyton for whatever reason. I think most football fans can get behind that. I'm a Seahawks fan. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But, who else do you think, besides Peyton, who needs to have at least a non-turnover game or one turnover game, who else for the Broncos on offense needs to step up and have a really good game for them to win?
Well, they're wide receivers. Demaryius Thomas specifically needs to play a lot better than he did during the regular season. The drops were drive killing for them. It was – I'm not sure what was going on with him, but Demaryius Thomas sticks out in my mind. Dude has to catch the football. They're not going to throw the ball an enormous amount, or that's at least my perception. I don't think that they will. I think that they'll want to try to establish a strong run game and control the clock and things of that nature. They'll want to keep Cam Newton off the football field. Demaryius Thomas has to catch the football.
Yeah, and speaking of Cam Newton, of course, he has to have a big game for them to win.
Sure.
Besides Superman, who else needs to step up for the Panthers to win, though?
Well, I think, the offensive line, I talked about them. Jonathan Stewart having a great year. He's healthy. Jonathan Stewart and Mike Talbert both, I think, need to. And I'm not sure who's going to be behind them in the running back rotation. They'll need to have a strong running game. And then the other guy, I would think, Josh Norman, you want him to have a good game. Cortland Finnegan.
And Cortland, what a perfect tie-in. Not having anything to do with the Super Bowl, probably for the foreseeable future. We'll ask about the Titans.
Okay.
What do the Titans need to do to get back to the playoffs? How soon can that happen?
The Titans are in such disarray right now. It's a sad situation. I'm a little surprised that the transition from Bud Adams to whatever, it does look like Amy Adams Strunk is now the majority owner in charge. I was more surprised by that transition than I expected to be. I thought that they might have a stronger succession plan in order. It does not appear that they really had much of one. They've got to get that, and they've got to figure that out. And it does seem like she's the one who's going to be in charge. And beyond that, they've just got to get better players. Better coaching. We'll see how the Mike Mularkey being the at least initial long-term guy. We'll see how that works out. They've got to get some continuity and stability in the system. It's important for Marcus Mariota. Don't be putting him in multiple offensive systems like they've done so many times in the past. Give him some stability and just get better players. Hey,
Sharona,
and I'll say this too.
Oh, okay.
For God's sake, get some players in there that fans can get behind, okay?
That's a good point.
So true. I will, veer off the tracks. I'll tell you this much. Every year, my buddies and I, for the past, 5 or 7 years, we go to an NFL stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about, the stadium itself in Tennessee. I've put it out there, but my friends usually come back and laugh at me because they look at the overall talent and say, hey, Ted, why would we want to go see the Titans? We kind of, and to their defense, I got to agree. You look at the team, I don't know. Are the fans really behind it?
No, they're not. And there are a lot of reasons why fans aren't going to the stadium. There are a lot of reasons why there aren't more local hometown Titan fan butts in the seats. The talent on the field is part of it. The game day experience is terrible. There's just so many variables there. And, Amy Adams Strunk has indicated that they want to improve that. I just wonder if she's willing to listen to the hard answers.
Hey, Sharona, can I ask you a question real fast?
Sure.
Just because, we both live in Tennessee. It's funny because everywhere else that I've lived in Seattle, for instance, it's the NFL team, and then there's the college football team. But in Tennessee, the best stadium is Neyland Stadium, and the team that most people follow are the Vols. Do you think that actually it's like the opposite effect of everywhere else? Does that have something to do with the Titans and how much people show up to the games, spend on Titans?
I think it shouldn't. No, I think it shouldn't, and you've seen them try to develop that pipeline and that connection. It's been largely unsuccessful. Have they drafted a guy out of Tennessee that's been a success for them? They've tried to take some wide receivers, Joey Kent, Justin Hunter. Troy Fleming was on the team. They're just incompetent in doing that. It is amazing to me how incompetent they are.
Getting back to our Super Bowl theme, so Sharona, who wins the Super Bowl and why?
I think it's the Panthers, and for the reason, a lot of the reasons I've been saying. I just think they're the better football team. I think it's a great story if Peyton Manning is able to do it, if Denver's able to pull that out. The Panthers are rolling right now. They're clicking on all cylinders. I think overall the talent and the execution has been better. One of the wild cards here could be coaching. We've seen Ron Rivera go from being a heavily criticized conservative coach to Riverboat Ron, Mike Shula. And speaking of another guy who's revitalized his career, Mike Shula in Carolina. The coaching, intangibles like that could very well, change things. Is Gary Kubiak going to be willing to think outside the box to utilize the strengths of his football team? I haven't seen a lot of that from him. So we'll see. But I think it's Carolina. I think the Panthers win. I think my score prediction was 28-21.
Okay. So, Sharona, tell us, we want to thank you for coming on Baseball Beer and Barbecue. Tell us best ways to get in contact with you on social media, plug your blogs, your shows. Love Back Talk with Sharona, but
Thanks.
Tell us everything.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona, Back Talk with Sharona, my podcast. We're going to go into a little bit of off-season mode, but check out our Super Bowl Super Show from yesterday, 3-hour show, long show, with a lot of great guests on that. And we also posted the video chat with Vashti Hurt of Carolina Blitz and our Denver Broncos correspondent, Jennifer Eakins. You can find that on my YouTube channel. Tuesday night show for NFL Female, The Zone Blitz. It airs every Tuesday night, 9 p.m., and my Wednesday night show is Zach Law, Going for Two with Zach and Sharona. You can find my writing at NFL Female and at Pro Player Insiders.
Sharona, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Me. All right. Have a great day.
Right.
Keep pounding.
And now we're like to welcome Antwan Staley to the program. Antwan writes for the Palm Beach Post, Athlon Sports, and can be found on Twitter at Antwan Staley. Antwan, thanks for being on the show with us.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Pretty good. Hey, so before we even get into the Super Bowl, what were your biggest surprises from the NFL season in general?
Just in general, I guess the biggest thing is the Panthers just getting this far. I didn't see them. Honestly, I saw them in the preseason. They played the Dolphins. I cover the Miami Dolphins, and I looked at them and I thought this team might not even make the playoffs. But here we are. They only lost one game all year, and they're in the Super Bowl. So it's kind of amazing they got this far. It just goes to show you that preseason doesn't necessarily isn't the best barometer for future success. So they're a bit surprised to be. Just Peyton Manning and the Broncos getting this far, that was a little bit of surprise. I thought Denver would be a good team, but obviously you thought Peyton Manning would have a big part of it. But it's really their defense has really been the big reason why they're here and have a chance to win the title on Sunday.
And Todd has a question. Hopefully Todd's still there. Todd?
And yes, I'm finally here. Still having technical issues, which is a lot of fun. At any rate,
it happens.
Outside of the Super Bowl and kind of the big picture for football, St. Louis, they're holding the bag for about $144 million in debt for an empty stadium. Do you think city governments, state governments are ever going to learn their lesson that the NFL really care?
I don't see the NFL coming back there, but you never know. Could be years from now it comes back there. But yeah, I don't necessarily see it working. It didn't work with the St. Louis Cardinals. It didn't necessarily work. It was working when the Rams were winning, but obviously when they were not winning, and they wouldn't, it didn't work as well. Which I guess you could say a lot of places are like that. But if it's not bringing in their revenue stream, it just didn't work, and they wanted to go back out to L.A. and they had a big chance to, and Stan Kroenke made that move. So, but yeah, I don't see it going back there. St. Louis is a baseball town. Everybody knows that, and that's kind of, you have to battle the Cardinals no matter who you are. I don't see it coming back there. St. Louis is good for baseball. The St. Louis Blues and hockey are doing well. Having two teams in one, you don't have to. Not every city has to have 4 teams. You can be successful just having 2 major sports teams. So I think they'll accept that, but I feel bad for the people that actually work there and depending on those paychecks. That's who I really feel bad for.
Yeah, but to me the big question is, why do other municipalities then jump into the same thing? I mean, obviously Joe Robbie, he built the stadium himself. He didn't need taxpayers to set him up, because all these guys could do that. They just choose not to, and they hold municipalities. They blackmail them into, it's like, oh, give us this, give us that. It's like, why does every city keep doing this? Because eventually, half of them, it's going to happen just like it did in St. Louis, just like it did in Silverdome and the Astrodome and everything else.
Well, my understanding from the NFL, they don't necessarily want the owners to pay all the money, so they wanted to come from different areas. That's kind of frowned upon nowadays with Roger Goodell. I don't know why that is necessarily, but they would much prefer, the stadium be built rather it be taxed from people, or just kind of like corporations and things like that. They don't necessarily want the owners to pay X amount of money for the stadium, like themselves. So that's kind of my understanding of it. Like I say, I agree with you to an extent. If they want to pay for it, they might as well. I mean, they can. I think they should be able to. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell somebody what to do with their money. If they don't want to pay for it, if they can get somebody else to front the bill for it, but go ahead, go for it. Like, I don't necessarily mind that at all. Especially, you look at Mark Davis' case in Oakland. They're trying to find a new stadium, and he doesn't necessarily want to pay for it, and the city of Oakland is broke, so they're kind of at a standstill, like, what's going to happen there. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that situation. But, yeah, he clearly doesn't want to come out his pocket. He doesn't have the money that some of the other owners have because he's really a new owner. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that situation because I don't see a new stadium being built in Oakland. So having said that, I think they're probably going to have to look elsewhere to play in the next few years.
And I swear eventually we'll get back to football, but to me the question is, if you wanted to start your own business and you were going to employ, and obviously we'll scale this down because you're not going to be employing 10,000 people to take tickets and sell hot dogs and park cars, which are those fabulous high-paying jobs. Why doesn't Palm Beach set you up in your business and pay for the infrastructure? As it doesn't. You have to do that. I just don't understand why the NFL, the billionaires, get a free pass. But at any rate, let's move on to Los Angeles. Why do they want Los Angeles so badly when it never works long term?
The second biggest market in the country. I feel like it worked. It just, when the teams wasn't winning, I feel like people weren't going to the stadium. And obviously, the Raiders left mainly because they were promised a new stadium and they never got one. And Al Davis got tired of waiting, so he decided to go move back. I feel like the Raiders were doing well, especially at the time. A lot of their success in the past 25, 30 years has been out in L.A. They hadn't had much success out there in Oakland except for maybe 2000 to 2002, but they had a lot of success out there winning. It's just, I felt like they needed a new stadium. They didn't get one, so Al took his ball and kind of went back to Oakland. The Rams situation is a little different. That wasn't necessarily, they wasn't winning, and of course people wasn't going out to the games, but it's a big crowd out there. It's a big ton of Rams fans. I think with them being gone as long as they are, if they just have team can definitely work. I think the Rams, I don't know how much they're going to, as far as attendance is going to go, but I think it'll work this time, especially with, they're going to have like this huge, just ridiculous stadium, which is going to be state of the art, and that alone will get people to come out there and corporations and things like that. And so much of the NFL has changed now. So I think just that alone to get like companies to buy suites and things like that. So I think it'll work. I don't know they're going to sell out every game, but I think people will definitely be excited about it, at least at first.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, too, is that they're building a new stadium in the stadium that the teams played in before, when it wasn't really a good stadium, to be honest. So, changing. And Los Angeles sports fans, they turn out for Dodgers games. Maybe they're late and coming to the game, but they turn out. I mean, the Dodgers almost always are right up there with attendance. So it's not that they're bad sports fans.
Oh no, the Lakers are one of the worst teams in the NBA, and they still pretty good attendance. So it's not that at all. I think LA fans are pretty good fans. It's just a matter of it's so much. It's not necessarily so much to do. It's just like USC football has really dominated LA area. Like would they come out and support the Rams much like they do USC football? That remains to be seen. But we'll see. I'm curious to see how it's going to work out there next year.
Yeah, exactly. So, moving on to tomorrow's big game, which, of course, is the Kitten Bowl. No, I'm just kidding. It's the Super Bowl, which is at 6:30. The officiating for the NFL seems like it's just gone down. There's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, maybe they don't pay the officials as much as they should, or maybe they just, it's not a full-time job all year long for them. But first of all, what's your over and under for terrible calls, and how does the NFL fix the officiating issue?
Well, I think it's bad to an extent, but I don't think it's bad enough where it changes the outcome of the game for the most part. Yeah, you get some bad calls, and you're probably going to get two or three bad calls. The thing about holding is, like a lot of people see holding on offensive linemen holding defensive players. You see holding just about every play. If they wanted to call it, they could, but it's just a matter of how bad. Is it really blatantly? is the player being held. So it's, you're going to have your bad officiating. I don't think it's any worse than it's been, but I think you can make the argument that it could be their full-time job and it might be better because these officials are working part-time, but they're getting paid like it's pretty much a full-time job, most of them. So, I would argue that they could definitely make it a full-time job, and they probably have to get paid a little bit more, but they perfect their craft a little bit more. But it's like that, with any sport you're gonna have. I think the NBA is even worse though, like as far as like officiating. Like it's hard to officiate some of the players, but NFL you're gonna have your bad calls, and it's part of the nature of the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, talking about the players, Peyton has said that Cam Newton will be the face of the league. Peyton Manning, of course. I don't know him personally, but I'll say Peyton Manning. Said that Cam Newton will be the face of the league for the next 8 to 10 years. Do you buy that Cam actually will first of all, be able to maintain that level of play that he's done this year? And is Cam Newton the guy that the NFL wants to be the face of the league?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. I don't know if they necessarily want him to be. He's such a polarizing figure. Either people either love or hate Cam Newton, it seems like. I love Cam Newton. I think he's definitely a breath of fresh air. He likes to have a good time, and he's going out there doing his thing, and I don't have a problem with him doing the dancing and things like that. They're winning, so as long as they're winning and having success and he's having a good time, I don't have a problem with it. I could see if they were losing and he's still doing the same stuff, and then I would have a big problem with it. But to answer the first question, I definitely think he could. I definitely think he could have a really great career. He's had some really good years already in the NFL, and he's been in since 2011. I don't see why he wouldn't get any better. But I don't know about him being the face of the NFL. Obviously, you got Russell Wilson, who's also right there. It seems like Cam Newton is kind of like the flavor of the month at the time. Like right now, you had Russell Wilson, last couple of years. Colin Kaepernick, not that I'm comparing Cam to Colin Kaepernick, because I think Cam is much better quarterback and a player, but Colin Kaepernick a few years ago, he was the big thing. A lot of people thought he was going to have a outstanding career, and kind of look at his career now. So it's just kind of the flavor of the month. Like, we're going to have to see if Cam can sustain this. I think he can. I think the Panthers are going to be contenders going forward for a few years, but being the face of the league, I don't know. That's a good question. I think somebody like a J.J. Watt, could just possibly be, even though he's a defensive guy, like he seems like he could be more of a face of the NFL to me.
Hey, Twan, moreover, we've now seen two quarterbacks who can both run, but also, really well and make the Super Bowl in the last 3 years with Russell Wilson and Cam Newton. So you have that double threat. Do you think the NFL is no longer the pro-style game many people have come to know, or will it eventually bounce back?
Oh, I think it is still. Like, I still think it's different ways to skin a cat. Like, just because, Cam is a different type of guy. Like, not only can he beat you in the pocket, he can also run and run you over as well. I just think it's different. The game is different. You still have to be able to throw from the pocket, which is what Russell Wilson also does as well. I mean, he can run when he chooses to, but he can also beat you inside the pocket. I still think you have to be a really proficient pocket passer to be successful. We've seen it from other guys, like being able to. They can move, but can they throw? Can they make that big throw in the pocket when they need to? And they had some of the guys haven't been successful. So I still think it's a pocket league. I just think that some guys are able to move and able to do different things. And obviously Cam Newton is 6'5", 240, 250, however big he is, he's able to do that.
And what are the biggest advantages for the Broncos in this game?
Defense. They got the number one. They got the best defense in football. That's pretty much that's pretty obvious. Anytime you bring that to the table, you got a chance to win any game. And they did a good job against Tom Brady last week. And I feel like if they're able, it's going to be different this week because obviously Cam can move. But what they can do, they can kind of force him to stay in the pocket. Yeah, he can make plays that way as well, but you prefer him not being able to beat you with the legs. If he's able to beat you on the ground with his legs a number of times during the game, the Broncos are going to have problems. But their defense and the ability to rush the passer is really what stands out to me, and they have a solid secondary as well. So I think that's what's really going to be interesting. And yeah, I think that's what really stands out to me with the Broncos, just that and their receiving core as well. I think that's also going to be a big difference because I think Carolina secondary, if you look at the weakness of their defense, that's probably it, minus Josh Norman.
And just a reminder, we are with the brilliant Antwan Staley. What's the biggest advantage for the Panthers?
Well, really, they're a really complete team. Obviously you got Cam Newton who can, make plays there. They're a really big physical team. They like to just hit people in the mouth. And also, they have a really good defense as well. Their front seven is as good as anybody. Luke Kuechly, obviously the player that stands out there. Thomas Davis, I'm curious to see how he's going to play with that broken arm. But really I just like the Panthers style. They just have like a smash mouth style that they try to hit you in the mouth, and also they really, have a really solid defense as well, and a really quarterback that can make moves and has the ability to beat you in a number of different ways. So that's really what stands out to me as far as the Panthers are concerned.
And flipping back to the Broncos, how great a story would it be if Manning and the Broncos win the Super Bowl, and what Manning may have said, put it that way, is his last rodeo?
Well, it'd be like his boss, John Elway, a few years ago. So, John Elway won 2 Super Bowls and ended up retiring after the second one. I think if Peyton gets one more, I think that's what's going to be interesting to see. I'm curious to see how long it would take him to say he's done. But it seems like I think everybody it's almost a consensus that this is probably his last game, win or lose. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this is going to go. But yeah, it's kind of like his boss, John Elway, retired, went off into the sunset. Michael Strahan did the same thing. Jerome Bettis 10 years ago. So we've seen this story before. I think it was possible. I think it's very possible we may see it again tomorrow as well.
So this next question is totally theoretical, and you can have fun with it. Do you have like one or two just absolutely wild predictions for tomorrow? Like, for instance, the Broncos' leading passer is Von Miller for no reason. Is there anything that you see coming out of the game that you just might see as something ridiculous, but that may 1% have a chance of happening?
I don't know. That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. It usually always is something crazy. Hopefully it's not like a safety like we had a couple of years ago with Denver and Seattle. That was pretty bad, but and that was odd too. Especially people play a lot of the square games where you predict the score after the first quarter, second quarter, and all that, and that kind of just threw everybody's score to the monkey wrench. Just nobody predicts you're gonna get a safety in the Super Bowl, but. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that. That's a very good question. I'm kind of stumped on that one, actually.
Oh, no problem. It's weird stuff happens. Like you brought up the safety, and I'm old enough. I think Todd and maybe we're all old enough to remember when the linebacker for the Raiders had 3 interceptions, and he'd had 2 for his career, and he had 3 in the Super Bowl. It's just crazy stuff. I think that was 81 or something. But stuff happen. Weird stuff will happen tomorrow, no matter who wins or loses.
Like Larry Brown with the Super Bowl with the Cowboys about 20 years ago. He ended up having a huge game and kind of parlayed that to a big contract with the Raiders, which was a disaster. But yeah, you could definitely see somebody just unknown having big games. We've seen it that way. Timmy Smith with the Redskins, he ended up having over 200 yards rushing. So we've seen unknown heroes step up and have big games. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see that again tomorrow.
Yeah, Larry Brown is Neil O'Donnell's favorite receiver, I think. I think that's how it turned. Hey, guy's wide open. I got to hit him. So, besides the craziness, who do you think, first of all, I'm assuming you're rooting for Carolina. Is that true?
I don't really have a card in the race. I didn't grow up a Panther fan. I don't have a card in the race. I guess personally, if I had I would like to see Peyton win it just because I'm a football fan first, and I think he's been such a great competitor and just great quarterback, and it'd be great to see him have 2 Super Bowl rings. And, if he has 2, it's kind of, he's, I think in my estimation, he's one of the top 3 best quarterbacks of all. You can already say that anyway, but I think if you add that Super Bowl ring, whether he had a big role to do with it or not, you can say Peyton Manning, X amount of records and 2-time Super Bowl winner, and that really stands out. And you're like, wow, this guy, with the numbers and the championships and things like that, this guy you make the argument of being the best of all time. I'm not saying he is, but he definitely is in that conversation. or definitely would be. He'd be slam dunk if he wins his second. So, but I don't care. I just wanted a good game. I don't want to blow out like it was Seattle and Denver a couple of years ago. I just want to be able to relax and chill and be able to watch a good game tomorrow. That's really what it is to me.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that Seahawks game, but I know most people.
I'm sure you did. I know you did.
But so basic question: who wins and why?
I like Denver. I think I always take a number one defense. I think the Panthers obviously have been dominant, and a lot of people were picking them just because they pretty much dominated everybody they played, with the exception of the Atlanta Falcons, and almost some hiccups throughout the regular season. But I think Denver is going to be able to at least kick. Not maybe sack Cam Newton a lot of times, but at least keep him in the pocket and don't let him beat him with his legs. And I think it's going to be a real defensive game. Both of these teams have really good defenses, so I don't see it getting out of the. I don't see anybody scoring 30 points. If anybody scores 30 points, it would be the Panthers. And if that's the case, then they would absolutely win. But I think the Broncos defense, they're going to be able to get some pressure and force some turnovers. And Peyton having 2 weeks rest, and they're saying his arm looks really good, and there's no reason to think why he at least can't put on at least one more solid performance before he rides off into the sunset. So I like the Broncos. I think it's going to be a close game, 28-24. That would be my prediction for the game. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers were to win it. And if they do win it, you have to consider them having one of the better seasons of all time, just the way they've dominated opponents.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that they're playing for that, and I think that the Broncos defense a lot of people have Carolina predicted to win, so I think the Broncos defense might be playing with a chip on their shoulder because, hey, people give us credit for being a good defense, but not one that can win a Super Bowl. I think that's an excellent point. So, Antwan, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with you.
So it's always great to have you on. We've had you on several different shows, and you're always fantastic, and you were again today. So will you let people know where you can be found on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Antwan Staley. Find my work at the Palm Beach Post and Athlon Sports, and I do college pro football. I also do some hockey as well, and we'll be doing a little baseball when that's right on the corner as well. So you can check me out there as well. And if you're in the South Florida area, I'm also do a little radio there as well for $7.90 the ticket occasionally, and I'll be on next week as well at the 7 o'clock hour. So those are the places you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on, and enjoy the Super Bowl.
You guys take care.
Thanks so much.
Antwan's always great. He's always fantastic
yes,
when he's on. So Sharona and Antwan, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch right there. Start the show, right? So we'll have Danny Kelly on in just about just 8 minutes or so. One thing I do want to bring up is John Clayton actually he ranked his top 10, I think. Let me see if I can pull up the article. Top 10 best defenses ever, and this is how it runs down basically. And I think this will make. The Jets aren't on there, but they've had excellent defenses. So number 10 is the Miami Dolphins, 1973. Todd, excellent. Best defense the Dolphins have had, do you think? Because he doesn't have them again, but you think 73's defense is the best they had?
Yeah, I mean, the Killer Bees came close, but I think that incarnation, and they actually were better the year they lost 2 games than they were the previous year when they were undefeated. So, I would say it's the best defense they've had. Why they don't have a defense that's even close to that, since they screwed their salary cap by getting Mr. Sue, is beyond me, but hopefully they'll be fixing that. But yeah, I would agree that's their best defense, and it's despite as much as I like Marino, it was their most efficient offense too.
Yeah, and if they'd had that defense in the 80s, Marino would have several Super Bowl rings. Unfortunately, he played with mostly a bad defense. So, the Rams, 1975, that's number 9. The Packers, 1962 Packers, which all of us remember, of course, right? No. Number 8, the Minnesota Vikings of 1969 is number 7. The Broncos, 2015 version of the Broncos, number 6 all time in his. And he, if anybody wants to check this article out, just go to espn.go.com. And John Clayton's obviously he's from Western Pennsylvania, has lived in Seattle for years and years. So, maybe he's a little bit more prone to like Steelers, but it's John Clayton, so he definitely knows what he's talking about. Buccaneers 2002 is number 5. Ravens 2000. I mean, man, those defenses. The Ravens 2000 being number 4 is. The top 5 defenses are just crazy good. I'll just put it that way. Number 3 is the 2013 Seahawks. Number 2 is 1985 Chicago Bears. I mean, it's a ridiculous list. And then number 1 is the 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, those top 5 defenses are, if you're number 6 and you're the 2015 Broncos, that's pretty good company to keep with those other 5 defenses that rank above you. I wonder if the ranking will change any at all if the Broncos go on to win the Super Bowl. I mean, the Broncos have been great. Obviously, what the Broncos have been able to do this year is mostly attributed to their defense. So I'll throw this in. We talked a little bit with Antwan. I'll throw this out to you guys. The Broncos, defensively, obviously NFL players always play with kind of a chip on their shoulder, but do you think the Broncos feel at all underappreciated because a lot of people are picking the Panthers? And the flip side of that, Peyton, a lot of people are giving everything. Peyton can do this and that. I think Antwan had a good point where he has had 2 weeks off. But with Peyton, do you think he comes out, hey, this is my last rodeo, and I'm going to give it all I got? It seems like I think the Panthers are going to win, but it seems like things are pointing towards possibly the universe wanting the Broncos to win this game. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think, like you said, why shouldn't Peyton just let it all hang out? I mean, if he winds up, tearing some tendons and separating his shoulder and his torn fascia just gets worse. I mean, unfortunately, all of those things could happen on the first play. But at this point, I don't think he cares. And he's going to stay in the game as long as he can. In his presser, someone was asking him politely, basically he was asking him, when do you think they would put Osweiler in if you're having a bad game? And I'm not sure if he literally didn't understand the question. He's a bright guy, but he certainly acted like he didn't understand the question. His concept is like, well, it's just we'll push harder and, we'll win. I mean, it wasn't like the thought that, we'll put Osweiler in if I'm having a terrible game. It's like that ain't going to happen. They will have to kill him to take him off that field. So, yeah, I certainly think he can. I actually expect him to have a really good game. I mean, like everyone says, he's not going to throw for 350 yards, but I think he can come. I can see him going over 300 yards. I mean, the Panthers, everyone is selling the Panthers as this unstoppable machine, and they're not. And they're saying that Cam can't be stopped. I mean, they act like he's literally Superman. The guy did get sacked 33 times, and he didn't play the best defense, and he didn't play the team that led the NFL in sacks. So, I think they can do enough to contain Cam and win the game. He gets sacked more per attempt than Peyton does. It's like, okay, where does this storyline of Peyton being mobile play in? It's like he's still hard to bring down, comparatively speaking, because it's the same thing. He gets the release off quickly, and he does it. So yeah, I actually think the Broncos will win this game. It's going to be a hell of a tough game. I mean, of the two, I don't see the Broncos blowing them out because, again, their offense hasn't been that great. Their running game is not that great. And the Panthers, if one team's going to blow one out, it's going to be the Panthers, but I really don't think that's going to happen.
I think this is a conspiracy theory. I mean, I wish we had the audio for the X-Files, but I think all along Kubiak has been waiting for this moment, because sometimes when you have that aging, athlete, like a legend like Peyton Manning, hey, you rest them along the way because you need them at the end of the season. And what have we seen on several occasions with the Broncos over the past couple of years? Peyton in the playoffs wasn't Peyton. Or it's like he seemed tired or he was hurt or, I think Peyton he's going to go out there and give us a vintage, one last look at Peyton Manning, the one that we all remember. Now, I think Todd hit it on the head will he throw for 400 yards and 8 touchdowns? No. But I think he's going to show up. Do I still think the Panthers are going to win? Yes. But I think it's going to be a competitive game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. So that's where you insert the X-Files music.
No, I think one thing that's important is going back to the Patriots, because the Patriots are the arch rival of Peyton and always have been, and Patriots fans like to point out that their quarterback has 4 Super Bowl rings and Peyton has 1, but every time they've played, except for like 3 times, the player with the better defense has won, and we see that with, for instance, the Patriots have 4 Super Bowl rings with their quarterback Tom Brady. If you have, now this doesn't, of course, it's all theoretical, but if you put this Broncos team on the 2000s Colts team, Peyton has like 6 Super Bowl rings, does he not? I mean, it's crazy. It's just it's a team game. So you can't. It's not Brady versus Manning. It is what it is. These are some numbers before we get to Danny Kelly in just a second. The numbers for Denver's defense this year: number 1 in total defense, number 1 in pass defense, number 1 in sacks, number 3 against the run. I mean, that's pretty good. Number 3 against the run, number 1 against the pass. Number 4 in scoring, number 3 in defensive touchdowns. The team, because Denver's offense has turned it over so many times, actually has a -4 turnover ratio, which goes to show how good that defense is, not how bad the offense is in a way. So, anyway, let's take this time before we play the Danny Kelly interview. Let's just go ahead and pick it. I picked the Panthers to win 28-14. I hope that Peyton wins it. It's not that I'm hoping the Panthers win it. I don't dislike the Panthers, but I think they just have so much momentum. It reminds me of one of the teams in the 80s where you go into the playoffs with so much momentum that it takes you to the Super Bowl championship. So I think it's 28-14 Panthers. Todd?
I think it's 26-23 Denver.
34-26 Panthers.
That's high scoring. That would be surprising to me, but
that's probably 5 defensive touchdowns.
Yeah, that's right.
Which in this game could happen.
That's true. So we talked to Danny Kelly earlier in this week, and we're going to play it live for you right now. So this is Danny Kelly, editor of Field Goals, also a writer of NFL, about the NFL for SB Nation. This is what Danny Kelly had to think about the Super Bowl. We now welcome to the program Danny Kelly, editor of Seattle Seahawks site Field Goals. Danny also writes about the NFL for SB Nation. Danny, thanks for being on with us today.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yep. Before we get into the Super Bowl, I have a couple of questions. The first one is that it seems like the Browns have already announced that Johnny Manziel will be cut on March 9th, which goes to show how weird the NFL is, because it's like, hey, Danny, you work for Field Goals, but we're actually going to fire you in May. Just to let you know, so, do what you got to do. But are you surprised? What do you think the future is for Johnny Manziel in the NFL?
Well, it's not terribly surprising. I think on one hand, you kind of heard about his issues from when he was in college, and his dad came out and said something along the lines of he's an alcoholic even before the draft. So you kind of know that there was some stuff under the surface going on there with him, but it is a little surprising on the other hand that he's just been such a knucklehead. He can't seem to stop partying, it's something a lot of people joke about, but it legitimately seems like he has an issue with drinking, and so there's that going on, and so it just seems like he just can't get it together, and it's really unfortunate, but. And because it's he's shown flashes of being kind of an interesting player, and we saw him against the Seahawks. He looked okay this year. Kind of made a few plays, and you kind of wonder what his overall potential could be in the NFL. But I just think, the Browns have given him plenty of chances to kind of get his shit together, and he just hasn't at all. He's been spotted at different parties here and there. It seems like once a month at least, probably for the last 6 months or something. So. I don't know. To me, it looks like he's going to be one of those busts that just never ends up playing in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like one of those things where he actually, the timing of his going out is like, oh, I've had a great game. Now I'm going to go to a party, and it comes out. It's ridiculous. So, and one more question before we get to the Super Bowl, and of course I have to ask it as a Seahawks homer. So, let's break down every Seahawks unrestricted free agent. No, I'm just joking. So, but seriously though, Marshawn Lynch is most likely not going to come back. First of all, who do you think Kristen Michaels actually comes back to possibly back up Thomas Rawls? And if you had to choose between Okung, Kearse, and Irvin, who, if any of those guys, are likely to return to Seattle?
To answer your first question, I do think they'll get Kristen Michael back. I was talking to Davis, too, about this. He's kind of the Seahawks field goals, Seahawks cap guy, and he kind of, has an idea of the big picture better than I do. But he was saying he doesn't think the Seahawks are going to place a second-round tender on him or a first right of refusal tender on him, because those tenders, those restricted free agent tenders, actually dictate kind of how much they make in the year. So like the second round tender would be like $2.5 million as of last year's numbers, and then the right of first refusal tender would be like $1.5 million. And Davis was thinking, and I kind of agreed. I don't think that he's going to get that on the open market anyway. He hasn't really shown, one, that the NFL hasn't shown a ton of interest in him. He was released from Dallas, and no one picked him up. Washington signed him to their practice squad and then released him. So he hasn't shown that he has a lot of interest anywhere. That might change slightly based on how he played with the Seahawks in the later part of the season. But I think that running backs are kind of a dime a dozen, honestly. So, with the draft coming up, with some guys coming into free agency, I think teams probably aren't going to be super interested in Kristen Michael, and I think the Seahawks will end up just trying to re-sign him at like around $800 for a year or two, or $800 a year for a year or two, and just kind of see how he goes and see if he can continue to be consistent and become more of a pro and all that, and all the stuff they talked about with him. So to answer your question, I don't think that they're going to do the restricted free agency route with him unless they place a tender on him and then negotiate with him from there, because those tenders are not actually guaranteed. But I do think he ends up with him with the Seahawks at the end of the day. I think that he will be a Seahawk next year and probably be the main backup to Thomas Rawls, because I do think Lynch is going to either retire or get cut. And then to answer the second part of your question, I think that of those three, I think I would pick Okung as the more important guy, just in terms of, we saw what Russell Wilson can do with an offensive line. It's not necessarily easy to replace your left tackle, and I think if you're trying to replace a left tackle, it could have a domino effect for the rest of the offensive line. It just kind of destabilizes everything. So if I were choosing of those three guys, I would definitely go with Russell Okung, just because the offensive line is so important, and he's shown to be at least starter level guy, potentially Pro Bowl level if he stays healthy. So it's going to be interesting though, because obviously he's representing himself, and that could make it have some weird sort of variables in terms of him getting hurt feelings or what, as the negotiations go on. So it'll be an interesting situation. But I think I would go with him just because, the importance of the offensive line over those other positions.
Cool. Hey, Danny, this is Todd. And since Lee signs the checks, this is still a somewhat Seahawks-centric question. But it does relate to the Super Bowl, though. Of course, Seattle's played Carolina twice. They lost twice. What can the Broncos do that Seattle couldn't?
Well, that's a good question. Their defense is better than the Seahawks, I think, this year. They have an incredible pass rush. Their pass rush is ridiculous. And that's not to say the Seahawks pass rush is bad, but if you looked at the game, the Seahawks lost, especially in the first half, like they just didn't get any pressure on Cam Newton. And that was a huge issue, and he kind of sliced them up at times. And so I think the one thing that they can do is get a ton of pressure on Newton and cause him a lot of trouble. They also have a really good run defense, so their defense is ridiculously good. So I think that's kind of the variable, and it's a really interesting matchup because it's kind of like one of the best offenses in the NFL in Carolina. They had more points and touchdowns than any team in the NFL this year, and they have a really unique run game, with Cam Newton as a runner. So that's going to be fun to watch. But I think it's a really good matchup because they're the best offense, or one of the best offenses against, I think, the best defense by far. And, that's going to be just kind of see who comes out on top there. Obviously, when the Seahawks played the Broncos in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, it was the best defense versus the best offense, and the defense dominated that. So I wonder, if that will be the case again this year. The thing that makes me worried about Denver, though, in terms of winning the game, is their offense just hasn't been very good. It's middling at best, even when they're playing their best. So I think the Panthers' defense is really, really good, too. I just overall think the Panthers are more balanced and just really there's not many ways to beat them, honestly, and the record kind of shows that, obviously. But, man, they just are so balanced and so good on defense and offense. And Cam Newton's playing really, really well right now. I mean, he's over the last 8 or 9 games, his numbers are obscene. He's just been really, really good. So, I don't know. I think that the defense, the Denver defense, will give him some issues, and it'll probably be an interesting game. But I just don't know. I can't see Denver winning. Anything can happen. But right now, I just feel way more confident in the Panthers about this one.
And Cam Newton, of course, you mentioned him several times, and obviously he's the key. He's certainly the NFL MVP this year. What's the difference between Cam this season and in past seasons?
Well, I think he's gotten a lot better in the red zone in terms of making really good decisions. He's had good seasons in the past, but this year he really put everything together in terms of just making good decisions and really, really executing in the red zone. I think a lot of people talked about his stats weren't that impressive during the first half of the year, and he was already being talked about as an MVP candidate, but his stats weren't all that great compared to a lot of guys. But if you look at his red zone stats, he was really, really good, and it kind of goes into the fact that he's a runner too. So he just creates so many problems for teams in the red zone. So I think his execution and taking care of the football in the red zone has been the biggest change, I think, for him. And then, what he's able to do with kind of a bunch of nobodies at receiver this year has been pretty impressive too. It's kind of the same thing that we've been saying about Russell Wilson for the last couple of years. Ted Ginn is his number one, and that's kind of crazy to think about. And so, obviously Greg Olsen's his go-to guy, but the fact that he's been able to do so well, have so many passing touchdowns, so much success in the red zone with that cast of receivers is pretty impressive. I just think overall, a lot of people talk about the maturity thing. I think that's kind of hard to measure, but he does seem like he's just a different, more confident quarterback, not making as many mistakes as he did last year. So I think he is just becoming more of a veteran, I guess. It's obviously kind of a vague statement, but he just feels like more of a veteran this year than he did last year.
Hey, Danny, the Panthers appear to have some injury issues with Jonathan Stewart and Thomas Davis, among others, but both will play, but especially with Davis, we don't know how well. So how much, if at all, will the Panthers' injuries affect the game?
I think the Davis injury is really interesting and something to watch. I think going back to last year, you kind of remember Richard Sherman had a shoulder thing, and so he wasn't really tackling with his whatever arm it was, his right or left arm, I can't remember. I can wonder what it'll be like with Davis in that same situation, because, obviously he could get out there and play, but, he just broke his arm. And so I don't know how confident he'll be in tackling and kind of using that arm, and it could lead to a couple of big plays. And as we've seen in a lot of Seahawks games, 1 or 2 big plays can be the difference in a game, right? So I think one of the reasons the Panthers' defense has been so incredible this year is because they're really good tacklers, and they have a lot of great speed on defense. Kind of the same sort of story as the Seahawks. But, if you start missing tackles, things can fall apart pretty quickly. And that's kind of the basis. They're very fundamental, come at us, we're just going to be better than you kind of defense. They don't do a lot of crazy stuff. They just tackle well, have a lot of team speed, discipline, that kind of thing. And so, again, if Thomas Davis can't tackle, I could just see 1 or 2 big plays being a really, huge momentum shifter type things. And that could be a big factor. So if there is kind of one variable in this game that I look at in terms of the potential X factor, I think it is that what are you getting from Thomas Davis, because he's been so good for them. He's been incredible for them this year. And if he's not 100%, or even if if he's just not able to tackle, really, that could be a big factor.
So I got a question about Gronkowski Light, Greg Olsen. He's having a fantastic year, and even though the Patriots struggled against the Broncos, Gronkowski got his yards. How much of an effect do you think Olsen will have in the Super Bowl?
Well, again, I think he's their number one go-to guy. He had that amazing catch against the Seahawks in the end zone to kind of put the game away. I think that made it 30-0 or whatever at that point. He is kind of the guy that they use all over the field. He's a seam runner. He kind of does a lot of underneath stuff too, mid-level stuff to get first downs. He's just kind of a jack of all trades kind of guy for them, and he's one of those guys that Cam trusts a lot. So I think he'll be a big factor. I do think that Denver, of all the defenses in the NFL, are probably one of the most equipped to defend him. Again, I just think that Denver defense is incredible. They have a really, really good pass rush, so Cam's not going to have a ton of time to throw the ball. And then they've got good coverage, linebackers and safeties and cornerbacks. So they can really do a lot of stuff to stop him. And I really like their defensive coordinator too, whose name Wade. I'm blanking on his name right now, but
Wade Phillips.
Wade Phillips, yeah. So anyways, I really just like everything about their defense, and so I think, of all teams in the NFL, I think they're pretty much the most equipped to stop the Panthers, actually. Maybe then other than the Seahawks, but I think they're probably going to go to him a lot, though. I think they have to. And again, it's kind of to repeat what I said earlier. It's one of those crazy good matchups where, I just don't know how the Panthers are going to beat the Broncos on offense. I don't know how they're going to move the ball and throw the ball down the field. But at the same time, I don't know how Denver is going to be able to throw the ball or move the ball down the field on Carolina. So I don't know. Something's got to give, but it's going to be really interesting. I think Olsen is their number one receiver, de facto number one receiver. So he's obviously going to be a factor this week.
We're speaking with Danny Kelly, editor of Seattle Seahawks Field Goals site. And, of course, he writes about the NFL for SB Nation. And, of course, the big story above all probably is Peyton Manning. It might be his last game. Could well be his last game. Maybe. He's not telling anybody except he is. He had a really good first 17 minutes against the Patriots, but then the offense struggled. How good does he have to be in the Super Bowl for Denver to win?
Well, I think, number one, he can't turn the ball over. We saw what happened when Russell Wilson gave away the ball twice against Carolina. They kind of just jumped all over Seattle. And Seattle was playing really, really well at that time. And so those turnovers were enormous and backbreaking, honestly. And so, obviously Peyton Manning had 17 interceptions this year, which is second most in the NFL, and he only had 9 starts. So he can't be that Peyton Manning. If he's that Peyton Manning, they're toast, honestly. They won't be able to hang with the Panthers. But he has played a little bit better of late. He feels a little bit like he's a little more healthy, which is obviously a big deal for a 39-year-old guy. He's taking care of the ball a little bit better. They basically, against the Patriots, they kind of just made like 2 or 3 big plays, and then for the rest of the game kind of just went real conservative. And it kind of got the job done. I mean, it's kind of like what we saw with the Seahawks in past years, where their defense would dominate, and then their offense would kind of just be real careful not to turn the ball over and just kind of run the ball and if they're not getting what they want, then punt and just kind of play the field position game. I think that's probably what we're going to see from them. The one thing that you could watch this week is in the Super Bowl is the last 2 games, the Broncos have gone to a under center offense a lot more. I think now it's like 50-50 in terms of under center versus shotgun. And obviously, Peyton Manning's been a shotgun quarterback forever. So it's kind of a change up for him. But the Kubiak zone blocking run game is really based on being under center. It's kind of like how they did it during the 90s when they won 2 Super Bowls. And, they've got that whole cast of characters back. For the guys that were with the 97, 98 Super Bowls, like Alex Gibbs, Gary Kubiak, John Elway, those guys are all now still with the Broncos and kind of trying to do the exact same thing they did back in the day. So that's kind of the one factor to watch, how often they go under center versus in shotgun. So I think they're going to try and run the ball a ton. And obviously that's not easy against the Panthers, but nothing is really. So I think they're going to try and establish that and get that going, take care of the football, play conservative on offense, don't turn the ball over, and hope their defense can basically dominate the game from that side of football and kind of do what we've seen the Seahawks do in the past, where it's like a low-scoring affair, and you come out in the end with maybe the last possession in the game. So, I just think the key is that he can't turn the ball over. Like, if he starts throwing ducks, turning the ball over, it's gonna be lights out for the Broncos.
And Danny, you've talked a lot about the Broncos defense and how much of a problem you see them giving Carolina, and it's not like the MVP has been perfect. I mean, he got sacked 5 times by the Titans of all teams, and the Falcons actually handled him pretty well in their second game. Is he going to have to do anything differently to handle that pass rush, or is the team going to have to do something differently?
Well, I think the best way to beat a really good pass rush is to run. Run at the ball, run at it, because if you get past the line of scrimmage, then you're home free. I think the Panthers are built to beat that pass rush. I think they could line up with a lot of heavy sets and run the ball, or just do these little play action plays where they're getting the ball out quickly. So I do think that they're built to kind of weather that and play well against it, but it's going to be tough for them to pass the ball. I do think that, just because a really good pass rush paired with a really good defensive secondary, like that's really tough to beat. So it could be one of these games where it's a low yardage game in terms of air yards, and so I don't know. It's going to be interesting. The Panthers' offensive line has been better than I think everyone thought they would be this year, but they're not impervious to guys like Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, and even their interior guys are playing really well, Derek Wolfe and Malik Jackson and a few other guys. And so, it's going to be interesting. I think they will run the ball a ton, though, and that's because that's a good way to kind of mitigate a good pass rush, is just run at it, So, and they've been probably the best run team in the NFL. So, again, it's, in terms of matchups, I think obviously I would rather have seen the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, but in terms of matchups, it's a really, really interesting matchup, because it's two teams that are elite at different things, and it's really tough to figure out who has the advantage on either side of the ball. I think obviously Denver has the advantage on defense, but that's one of the best offenses in the NFL too, in Carolina. So, it's just kind of a heavyweight bout in that sense. So it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game. I think the only thing that would scare the Panthers possibly is if the Broncos traded for Julio Jones at this point. But who knows what'll happen. So we have one more question for you, which is, of course, and I think I may know what the answer is, but who do you think wins and why?
I picked the Panthers just because they have more ways to win, I think, than the Broncos do. I think they're better on defense than the Patriots were. They're a better run team than the Patriots were, obviously, and so I think that they're set up to beat the Broncos in those two ways. But I just think Denver has to be kind of perfect on defense to win, whereas Carolina is really, really good on defense and offense, and so they're more balanced. I just think that it's just harder to beat them. There are fewer ways to beat them than it is for Denver. I don't know how Denver's going to move the ball against Carolina, really. I just don't see it happening. But it's Peyton Manning, and he's kind of done it over the years. He's a technician at the line. He's so smart at changing plays and all that. So he's kind of another he gives me pause in terms of, really feeling confident about the Panthers. But overall, I just think the Panthers are, just really, really confident, playing with a ton of confidence, playing with, having so much fun playing. They're going to come out. I think they'll probably come out and punch the Broncos in the face, and I think that ultimately, they're just going to kind of dominate the game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout necessarily. I think it's probably going to be a closer game, but I think that the Panthers are a better team, and I think that they'll win.
Awesome. Well, Danny, you're always great. We've had you on the Seahawks show 4 times, I think, and it's very nice of you to come on Baseball Beer and BBQ. So will you let people know where you can be found on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Field Gulls, so FIELDGULLS. Obviously at the website Field Gulls, and then I also doing a bunch of Super Bowl stuff for SBNation.com this week. So check all those out.
And we are back, and again, we'd like to thank Sharona, Antwan, Staley, and Danny Kelly of Field Gulls for being on. Last year we were having this show, and it was Patriots versus Seahawks, and I was feeling all intense. This week it's a lot more laid back for me. I hope to enjoy the game. Ted, where are you going to watch the game tomorrow?
Watching the game at my home. Dad and a few others are going to come over. So I'm putting in the order for the food and everything today. We'll be picking it up early tomorrow, and just, it's really more about family. And I mean, I'm not going to say it's family in football. I don't want you guys to think I'm totally pro NFL, but it's just an opportunity for a family to get together. That's really it. Just like a lot of folks this year, Jets are not in it. Jets haven't been in it since '69. I'm just going to be a fan.
What kind of food are you having?
Well, we're going to do a platter of sandwiches. Then we have, the buffalo wings, and then wifey usually cooks lasagna also. So awesome. You guys are invited. You guys are invited to come over, if you want.
I'm going to start my car right now, let it warm up, and then I'll be up there.
Exactly. I'll be up there 11 hours later than Lee, but I'm on my way.
Got it.
What are you going to do, Todd? Where are you going to watch the game?
As it stands now, I will be over at my brother's, and we will be watching the big game since we are not paying the licensing fee to say what we're watching. But we'll probably start off with a little Everybody Loves Raymond, and then we'll watch a little of this game where they throw this semi-inflated pig's bladder around for a while, and we'll eat some cheesy comestibles, probably.
Right. And you're going to have your big orange drink, right? That's what you're going to do. I feel like we should play the Andy Griffith, what it was football right now. I will be over at my friend Mike's house with a bunch of people. A whole bunch of people are going to be over there, and I think most of them will be pro. I don't know, actually. I guess pro Peyton fans. Everybody that's there are pretty much not from Tennessee, so it'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll be a good game. I'm still hoping the Broncos win, but I don't think they will. But hey, the good thing about the Super Bowl is it's the end of NFL season, and we get right back on track with baseball starting next week at the same time, 10 a.m., and we'll be talking to Tom Dakers of Bluebird Banter, of Toronto Blue Jays SB Nation site, and we're going to preview the AL East. So we're going to get right back into baseball. So it's fantastic. The good thing about the end of football season is that we get to turn it over to the real sport, baseball, and start talking that. So that'll be exciting. And we've already picked who's going to win the Super Bowl, of course. So anything, Ted, quickly, is there anything crazy that you think might happen in this game?
Peyton Manning turns into Peyton Manning from 2013.
Well, hopefully it's even older than that. It's 2000. Yeah, he was great, but they lost. But Todd?
Yeah, I'm predicting Denver's going to win, so I think Peyton will actually play really well, and I think Superman will find some kryptonite in Von Miller's hands.
And the craziest thing I think that will happen is, oh my gosh, I can't even think of anything. I thought of the question. The craziest thing that will happen is it'll end up 3-2. It'll be such a defensive struggle that no safety for Denver. They get the 3. No offense to Broncos fans. That's our show. Thanks to everybody for being on. Tune in next week. AL East preview with Tom Dakers Here's our finale.
Do the Titans have a miracle left in them? Christie kicks it high and short. Going to be fielded by Lorenzo Neal at the 25.
Yeah,
pitches it back to Wycheck. He throws it across the field to Dyson.
He's got something.
30,
He's got
40,
something.
50.
He's got it.
40.
He's got it.
20. 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle.